this is the first of the monthly rent reports this year, which is comes from
Yeah.
Apartment List. They usually have it a little early. It does look like things are getting a little bit clearer when it comes to rent growth. It's not instantly great news, but it looks like we may be seeing some light at the end of the tunnel here. And this is particularly notable because Apartment List was on the more extreme side when it came to the rent declines that we were tracking throughout the end of 2022. And national rent growth is still negative. It's when it comes to month over month, it's negative 0.3, and it is at 3.3% year over year, which 3.3, well within the normal range. But as you can see in the Apartment List's graph, the rate of this negative growth is shrinking. And if it continues on this path, maybe a little less, maybe we start getting more. Maybe we start getting positive growth entering into renter season later this spring. And then just to kind of continue speeding along for the top markets that they have in the Apartment List, Indianapolis leads for the year and also for the last 6 months. And the other 6 months leaders are Miami, Oklahoma City, St. Louis, Houston, Memphis, Tucson, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. Lots of Midwestern markets there. It's funny. Memphis is a little bit of a state that I've heard that it may not be doing so well in 2023. But again, this is another variation that I'm going to sort this out.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be an analog or it's going to be the same thing. But I mean, with some of the, like the horrible video that came out of Memphis, like last week or so of, those police officers murdering that guy. Looking at what happened to Minneapolis after a sort of similar incident. I don't think it's the same. I think Minneapolis had other challenges, and obviously we're not seeing. I think there was potential for a major civil unrest, but I don't see people thinking Memphis is like so unsafe, so that I'm not going to live there or invest there.
Yeah, I wonder.
You always have those concerns, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I think that when it comes, it's like I don't know what these like kind of news social movements are going to result in the apartment market, but I do think that the Apartment List, their individual market information is a lot different than other ones. There is a subtle grouping. It's a subtle pattern. Usually they're similar. There's some huge variation here and there, but I remember that Apartment List has a little bit different take on individual market performance than a lot of the other reports.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more volatile. A little bit more swings, which maybe it's a little higher frequency and it's getting good data, but you always have to wonder.
Yeah.
Just one other. I mean, looking at Indianapolis, Matt. 6 months, 12 months, and since 2020, taking the number one spot this 6 months, 12 months, and then top 10. It's at 10. But since 2020, because I think the argument is going to say it's like, Indianapolis is down here, and then everything else goes down, it rises. But it's even going over a not a long period, last 3 years, but in a period of a lot of growth. So if we didn't have a lot of like growth, if it's like when things are growing, but like Indianapolis doesn't grow a whole lot, but just when things decline, we kind of keep growing. We wouldn't show up in the top 10. But you get the stability and resilience of when there's declines. We don't see really major declines. Sometimes it's just flat where everything else goes down, but then we also experience part of the upside as well. So I think it's a really like I'm completely biased because I'm from Indianapolis, live in Indianapolis, invest in Indianapolis, trying to buy more in Indianapolis, and obviously trying to convince everyone watching this to invest with us, to invest in Indianapolis if you're a credit investor. But here it is.
The long story and the short story are pretty much in our favor. And it is interesting, over the past 12 months, 6 of the 10 are in the Midwest. So, if you're looking at stories, the steadiness of the Midwest has remained a kind of underlying story. The stories changed when it comes to the Sun Belt, never really quite changed so much when it comes to the Midwest. Maybe they just don't like change, but whatever. The slowest growth markets are led by Providence. Then it's Seattle, Rochester, Grand Rapids, New Orleans, San Jose, Detroit, Boston, Las Vegas, and New York. It's really a big mix, actually. And the difference between the 6 and 12 months for the slowest growing markets could indicate some interesting shifts in markets. Phoenix, for example, has the lowest year-over-year growth, but it has done better in the past 6 months, and it's not even on the list of 10 slowest growing multifamily markets. So maybe Marcus and Millichap have they know something, and they know that Phoenix is going to rise.
Well, but so can we get into inside baseball on that though, Ben?
Yeah.
You know where John Chang's from?
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, so we're pumping up Indianapolis. Well, maybe John Chang. You got a rep for your own.
John Chang is a super brilliant guy that I have like a ton of respect for. But like, I've had personal conversations with him about Phoenix, and he loves Phoenix, and he thinks it's got great prospects. And he was one of the people that were telling me that he's like, Phoenix has outgrown that boom and bust cycle, and just like I am biased again towards Indy and maybe have a little bit of a blind spot, and I always try to like discount it because I'm like, oh well, maybe I'm missing something. But I'm just saying that I'm just saying I think he's their head of research and puts these reports together, and he does live in Phoenix, and so I'm not saying I'm biased like.
But that being said, like I don't, and I think we have said this too in all of our discussions about Phoenix or kind of similar markets. It's like they're not gonna go crash and burn completely. It's just going to take them longer to absorb. And I think that gets to the maturity. It's also like flat out population level. Like Dallas, Fort Worth can absorb millions, where something like Phoenix maybe can only absorb hundreds of thousands. There's a degree of difference here that I think plays a lot into the maturity of a market and maybe a little bit of its employment situation, but sometimes just population.
And then we don't need to get into too much into Phoenix, because I mean it's a really cool market. But the other thing that I have heard people say is a concern maybe about Phoenix is water and getting enough water to support that type of population and the industry and everything. I don't know.
I think about that on Vegas. They're in a desert. How long can you do that?
Well, and there's talk of a lot of these lakes and reservoirs. I mean, they have been drying up.
I'm not an expert. I do think it's very interesting and weird to me. Like, we've got a lot of places. Why build it?
I sometimes I think those like things that are like you have to think about because it could be a factor. Sometimes I'm optimistic enough though to be like, I think
it's a
they'll figure.
Well, and it's a big enough thing. Like, people are thinking about this problem.
It's existential. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's existential, and you'd like to assume or think that.
That's right.